Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to the Breslov parsha. It's Parsha's Tisa. It's the longest parsha in the book of Shmos, the book of Exodus. It's got 139 verses. Most of the parsha is taken up with the story of the golden calf. And it's a very sad commentary on our nation. 40 days earlier, they stood at Sinai, they saw God. And you have to kind of picture the scenario now. They were slaves in Egypt for a long time, 86 years. They were in Egypt for 210 years. They got out. They got out by witnessing 10 incredible miracles, the plagues that happened in Egypt. Right? If you see that you're about to drink a glass of water and an Egyptian comes running along, he wants to drink water, and in his cup it turns to blood, that's not a miracle, right? Or you're both drinking from straws from the same glass. You're drinking water, he's drinking blood. Miracles. Frogs, lice, the mixed animals that came, hail, darkness, and so on. 10 incredible miracles that you witnessed that could only have come from God. It's beyond nature. Nothing in natural science could ever explain what happened. Okay? You go out into the desert and you're trapped by the Egyptians. They're running after you. You come to the Red Sea. The sea splits. Did you ever see water split? Did that ever happen to you? That water split? No. It was a miracle. An incredible miracle. Then you go another few days and you have manna coming down from heaven. You're hungry, so you have manna coming down. You're thirsty? Well, the original Rolling Stone. You ever hear of the Rolling Stone? So they have a Rolling Stone that went with them in the desert. Moshe was told to strike the stone. Water came gushing out, and that stone accompanied the Jews 40 years in the desert, and whenever they camped, it rolled along with them, and it encamped with them, and from it came water for the entire multitude of Jewish nation that was there in the desert. So the Jews are in the desert with these miracles, day in, day out. They come to Sinai and God reveals himself. Here's the Torah. 40 days later, 40 days, they make a golden calf. How could you understand something like that? God tells them, don't make idolatry. 40 days? 40 days? 40 years, maybe. You got a little bit carried away. 40 years. 400 years. Okay. 40 days? And this is one of the most strangest things that ever happened in Jewish history. Reb Noson asked a question about this. He says, how could you understand this except for the fact that every day the yetzer is always there to think up new ways how to attack you. Every day he'll come up with a different approach. Let's put it this way. There was a story with somebody called Reb Shabsai, and they called him Reb Shabsai Breslover. That was the nickname he had. He was an older man. He was in his 80s already. He was a shoemaker by trade. He was retired. And it came to shul. He was there in shul from the first ones, always very early in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning. Even in the freezing, wintry, cold days, he would be one of the first to be in Beis Medrash. So one time someone asked him, Reb Shabsai, how is it that you come so early to the shul every day? He said, I'll tell you, I wake up, it's freezing cold. I'm nice and warm under the blanket, but I don't feel like getting out. but it's freezing cold, and I'm comfortable. And then I say, you know what? Stay in bed a little longer. Why not? Stay in bed. And then I realize right away, who's telling me to stay in bed? My yetzer hara, my evil inclination. But you see, he was born with me, and he's over 80, and I'm over 80, right? And he's telling me, you're an old man, stay in bed and rest. But he's as old as I am, and he's already on the job. He's already on the job, so why shouldn't I get on the job? So I get up, and I come early to Beis Medrash. 80 years, the yetzer hara tried to get a hold of Reb Shabsai, and Reb Shabsai would go with simplicity, and he would serve Hashem, get up in the morning and do what he had to do. 40 days, they couldn't last without making a golden calf. Reb Noson explains that every generation has its own yetzer hara. Every generation has its own feelings, its own ideas, its own desires of what is right for it. And every generation, the intensity of the attacks of the yetzer hara never waver. They never waver. So go back to the time of the revelation. The revelation was such an incredible miracle. God revealed himself to the people, and they saw him, they witnessed him, and then they started right away going off the path and going, serving idolatries or thinking of idolatries and whatnot. And this tells you how powerful your power of free choice really is. This is what Reb Noson explains on this passage. He says, think about it. Free choice. Free choice is one of the most incredible, or the most incredible creation that God can imagine. Imagine a king. You have a fella in the United States now, his name is Obama, President Obama. He gets so upset every time somebody says or does something against him, right? Now, he's really a nothing. He came from, who knows where he came from. I mean, he sealed his birth certificate, so nobody really knows where he came from. It doesn't matter, right? He grew up through the ranks. He went to school, okay. He was a little nothing congressman from Illinois. All of a sudden, he's president of the United States. Okay, it happens, right? But if he's president of the United States, he knows he's democratically elected, and he knows that he's supposed to be listening to the people, because he's supposed to serve the people. That's not what happens. He comes up with his own ideas. He forces his policies down the throats of the entire nation. In my personal opinion, I don't know if it has anything to do with the parsha, but my personal opinion, he's practically ruined the United States. But that's a separate story. But when it comes to, he's a king, a ruler, right? Or they called him the Messiah when he first got elected, right? People are supposed to listen to what he says. They don't listen. God created the entire world knowing that he is king and he can do whatever he wants, unlike the character we mentioned earlier. And yet, God created free choice. You want? Serve me. You don't want? Don't serve me. Go against me even. Go against God. God gave that power to people. And that's the power that rages within us every single day. So, Moshe went up to heaven to receive the tablets. He spent 40 days as an angel, not eating, not sleeping, right? And he's about to come down with the tablets, and then the Jews go and make a golden calf. And Moshe Rabbeinu now has to descend to earth, and he hears a whole tumult, and he says, this tumult is not right. And he sees the golden calf, he breaks the tablets. Now, you ask yourself the question, the whole world was created for the Torah to be received, for God to come and reveal Himself in Sinai. Rashi brings in Chumash the last verse, 31 in the first chapter of Genesis. It says there, Vayihi erev, vayihi voker yom hashishi. It was night, it was morning, it was the sixth day. The other days it says the first day, the second day, the third day. This it says the sixth day, the. Right? And Rashi explains there that it alludes to the sixth day of the month of Sivan when the Torah was given. So that the entire world was created for the Torah to be given at Sinai, so that the world now has a Torah, how to come, acknowledge God, and serve God. Comes Moshe, he takes the Torah with him, he comes down to the bottom of the mountain, he sees the golden calf, and what does he do? He breaks the tablets. This is the world was created for this moment, and he takes and breaks the tablets. That's it, no more Torah. So then what happened here? What were these 40 days for? You have a Torah, you give a Torah, then you come. What's going on? The Talmud teaches very interesting thing that 40 years prior to the destruction of the temple, the Sanhedrin, that was the high court in Israel, banned the death penalty. There was a death penalty if a person desecrates Shabbos, if a person commits adultery or idolatry or whatever, murder. A death penalty was issued, and the Sanhedrin, who was entrusted to uphold the law, banned the death penalty. And there's certain other things that were banned. Why? Because the Sanhedrin knew that the temple will be destroyed, and they will not have the power to implement the death penalties. They will not have the power to adjudicate the way they should, and therefore they're going to have to go back to the way God ruled the world. What did Moshe do? Moshe destroyed the tablets, no more Torah. The Sanhedrin did the same thing. Basically, certain laws of Torah were set in abeyance because of the situation. Why was this? Reb Noson explains in Likutey Halachot, it's the most amazing thought. God created the world. 2,448 years later, He gave the Torah. Well, if the world was created for the Torah, and the world was supposed to be existing upon Torah law, then how did the world exist until the Torah was given? How? The answer is that it was sustained by God's loving kindness, by God's chesed. It's called the Otzar Matnas Chinam, a treasury of unearned gifts. Even though you don't deserve it, you're going to get the gift anyway. So God sustained the world. He gave food, He gave water, He gave rainfall, He gave minerals, and whatever people needed to exist for those first 2,400 years, they were given. All by the grace of Hashem. So the world did exist without Torah. When Moshe came down with the Torah, and now the world could really reach its perfection because it has the right tool, all of a sudden there's no more Torah because Moshe broke it. Why did he break it? He broke it because he said, Hashem, listen, you sustained the world with your loving kindness till now. You're going to have to keep on sustaining it until we sort this matter out. The same happened with the Sanhedrin when the death penalties were set aside. Because if you can't implement it, so you're going to have to fall back on God's grace and let Him take care of all the murderers. Today we live in a very strange world. There's a lot of desecration of Shabbos. There were people who wanted to implement the Sanhedrin here in the state of Israel, And can you imagine what would happen if they had the death penalty for everyone who's desecrated Shabbos, right? You get rid of 80% of the population, God forbid. So there's no death penalty. What sustains the state then? The kindness of Hashem, the loving kindness of Hashem. You have these ISIS murderers and Hezbollah and Hamas and all the other characters that run around the world murdering each other. Syria, the way they're going around killing each other. Nobody takes heart, nobody cares, whatever. How could you live in such a world? How could such a world exist if not for the kindness of Hashem, that He has pockets where people could survive? The Talmud says that the Jews were spread to all four corners of the earth, because should they ever be set upon, like in the Holocaust in Europe, but there are other corners of the earth where they survived, which are untouched. And that's how they survive. So we are sustained by the kindness of Hashem. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. And that teaches us that no matter how bad things get, no matter how terrible our choices, no matter how bad it gets for us to do things that we want to do that are considered right, despite all that, there is a kindness of Hashem that exists in the world, and that all we have to do is try to uncover it. Always look for kindness. By doing acts of kindness, we arouse God's kindness. Doing these kind of things, we're always able to arouse that level of kindness that will sustain us, that even if we do the worst thing, even if we make the worst choices, we will always merit somehow to come out from behind and return to Hashem and live a good life. And may Hashem bless us all, that we have everything good, always and forever. Amen v'amen.